Welcome back to my channel, guys. I hope you're all doing good. In this video, as you can read the title, I'm going to share with you my reviews on the new K-Beauty eyeshadow palettes. I have been super excited to get them, and I've got only 2 eyeshadow palettes. They launched 4 eyeshadow palettes, but these 2 colors were just catching my eye, and the ones that I ordered was Wild and Free and Pure Bloom. I was so happy with the look and feel of the eyeshadow palette. So if you want to know everything about these 2 palettes, please keep on watching, but please take a moment to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And now let's jump in the video. So it comes in a packaging like this. The beautiful illustration has been done by Gauravi Sharma, and it's really pretty, guys. It's an embossed feeling which is beautiful, and then when you open the box you get a sleeve like this which has the same illustration, and then you get your eyeshadow palette. Something that I really like about this eyeshadow palette is that they have a mini tutorial sort of a thing in pictures for all those who don't really know and are confused to create an eye look. So I really appreciate that they have included this, and hence I really recommend this palette for beginners. The eyeshadow palettes are retailing for about 1200 rupees. So I would say they are not very expensive, nor are they very budget friendly. And this is how the Wild and Free palette looks up close. It's got beautiful earthy shades, and here are the swatches. They definitely are more pigmented when applied on the eye than the swatches over here. And this is the Pure Bloom palette, which I really like. This palette contains of mostly peaches and orange shades, and it's a beautiful palette for the day. So if you want to know how I created the 2 looks using both the palettes, please keep on watching. I always like to prep my eyelid, and I'm applying the eyeshadow base from P. Louise, and I'm spreading it evenly all over my eyelid. Then I'm taking the shade Brick and applying it in the outermost corners of my eye. I'm taking it all the way to my natural crease. As you can see, I'm only tapping the product as I've not set the eyeshadow base beneath it, and once I'm happy with the placement, I'm going to blend it out well. As the shades from this palette are extremely pigmented, I recommend building your product by taking the shadow little by little and then increasing your intensity as per your liking. Then I'm taking the shade Biscuit, and on a fluffy brush I'm applying it right above the shade Brick because I will use this as a transition color, and it is beautifully blending it with the shade Brick. Then I'm creating a cut crease using the P. Louise base, and I'm going from the innermost corners following the natural crease, and I'm just going to cut it and apply this eyeshadow base only until the 3/4 of my eye. Once I've spread it evenly and flattened it out, I'm going to take the shade Peach and apply it to the outer corners of the cut crease, which is the centers of my lid, and I'm gently tapping the product to get the maximum pigmentation out of this shade. As I go along, I'm also going to blend this shade with the outer corners of my eye, and to get a seamless blend, I'm going to use the tip of the brush. Now I'm going to take the shade Peach. The previous shade was Crimson, guys. I'm really sorry about that. So now I'm going to take the shade Peach and apply it from the innermost corners of my eye to all the places where we have not applied the eyeshadow, and I'm slowly, just in flickering motions, just applying the shade to get the maximum pigmentation out of it. And as I go along, I'm going to blend it out with the shade Crimson that we applied in the centers of our eyelid, and with the tip of a brush it will give me a seamless blend. And for my lower lash line, I'm going to start applying the shade Coral from the inner corners of my lower lash line only till half of my lower lash line, and I'm just slowly tapping this product because I did not see any pigmentation, and I felt it was a little patchy and it was a little difficult to blend. And in the outer corners of my lower lash line, I'm going to apply the shade Brick, and I'm only tapping it because if I swipe it, I know the pigmentation of the shade Coral will just get worn off. In the innermost corners of my eye, I'm going to apply the shade Salmon so that it would just open up my eyes. I will also apply the same shade Salmon to my brow bones so that it will give me a lifted look. And to finish off my look, I've curled my lashes and applied mascara from the same brand, and here is my final look using the Pure Bloom palette. I've also worn lashes for this look, and this is my look with lashes. I've already prepped up my eyelid while I was doing my base makeup, and now I'm going to apply the shade Wood in the outermost corners of my eye. Next, I'm taking the shade Caramel and blending it towards my brow bone with a fluffy brush. I am amazed to see the pigmentation of both the colors and how beautifully they blend together. Once I've blended it in the outer corners, I'm going to take the same shade and apply it towards the inner corners, and this is going to be the perfect transitional color, and I'm going to make sure that I apply it a little bit above my natural crease and further blend it out. Next, I'm taking the shade Olive and I'm applying it in the centers of my eyelid. As you can see, I'm taking the product little by little and slowly building the intensity, as these colors are extremely buildable and pigmented. So I recommend you take the colors little by little. Now I noticed that after applying the shade Olive, the shade that we applied in the outermost corners, which is the shade Wood, was kind of wearing off. So I'm going to re-tap it and apply and increase the intensity of it. Okay, so I was not very happy with the way this look was turning out to be. So I dipped my brush into the shade Butter and I'm applying it from the innermost corners to the centers of my lid where I applied the shade Olive, and basically I'm just covering the shade Olive with the shade Butter. Okay, I'm taking a flat brush and I'm going to apply the shade Bronze all over the centers of my eyelid where we applied the shade Olive. Now to blend out the harsh edges, I'm going to go in with the shade Wood again, and just with the tip of my brush, I'm just going to blend out the harsh edges of the shade Bronze to the outer corners. Then dipping it into Ebony with the slightest touch, tapping off the excess. I'm just going to apply it in tapping motions in the outer corners, and yes guys, look how pigmented it is, and I'm really happy with the way that this is coming out now. So I'm only tapping the slightest amount of the shade Ebony. Going in with the shade Almond, I'm just going to apply it towards my brow bone just to make my eye look a little bigger. Just to dig in into that ebony shade again, I'm taking an angular brush and I'm just going to apply it closest to my upper lash line. Now for my lower lash line, I'm just taking whatever product is there on my angular brush. This is the shade Ebony. I'm just going to apply it. And with the shade Almond now, I'm just going to smoke out my lower lash line. So I just want to increase the intensity of the shade Bronze. So I'm just going to take my Fix Plus and spray it on the brush, and then take a little bit of the shade Bronze on my eyeshadow brush, and I'm just going to drag it to see how pigmented it gets, and it definitely gets much more pigmented, guys. So I would definitely recommend taking the Fix Plus and applying it this way to get the maximum pigmentation of the shimmer shades from these palettes. And then to blend it out, I'm just taking the brush that I applied the shade Almond with without taking any more product. I'm just blending it out. I'm also going to take a little bit of the same bronze eyeshadow, and with the same brush, I'm going to apply it closest to my lower lash line in the innermost corners, just to increase the, smokiness of the look. And then to finish off my eye, I'm going to apply the matte Butter shade in the inner corners and on my brow bone. Now I'm going to curl my lashes and apply mascara from the same brand, and here is my final look using the Wild and Free eyeshadow palette from Kay Beauty. So these were my two looks that I created using both the eyeshadow palettes. Do let me know which one was your favorite in the comment section down below. Now before we end this video, let me give you my reviews on the eyeshadow palettes, because I know you guys are here for that. So I'm going to start with the Wild and Free eyeshadow palette. I love the matte shades from this palette, and the shade Ebony, which is the black shade in the palette, is the most pigmented, and I'm honestly a big fan of the black shade from the palette. Now moving on to the shimmer shades from this palette, I think they're not very pigmented. However, you can increase the intensity of the pigmentation if you spray a Fix Plus on your brush and then use the eyeshadow. They do have a little bit fallout on the face, so that is why I always prefer to do my eyes before I do my base makeup. However, there is not much kick out on the pan, which I really like, because I am obsessed with cleanliness and I don't like dirty pans and eyeshadow palettes. And I love this palette, guys, because you can just create any look, honestly, any look, going from day to evening. And honestly, please do try and get your hands on the Wild and Free eyeshadow palette. Now moving on to the Pure Bloom palette, guys, I cannot emphasize enough on how pretty this palette is. I was not very happy with this palette in terms of looks when they were, putting it on Instagram and advertising it. But I thought I needed to get it for you guys. So here I am with two eyeshadow palettes, and honestly, this look that has turned out using the Pure Bloom palette is beautiful, and I think this is one of my go-to looks now. So I'm definitely going to recommend you guys get the Pure Bloom palette. In this palette, the matte shades are also very pigmented and they blend beautifully and they are not patchy. However,